First off, overall impression of Deadpool and Wolverine.
It's meh.
Really?
I think it's like okay.
Okay. So we both saw it on Friday, and I texted you. I went to it with my good friend Joe Lust, and I say good friend. Apparently, it was his birthday, and I didn't know that when we went to it. So
we were talking about this before the podcast. I was like, "Oh, did you wish Joe a happy birthday?"
He's like, "Well, at least it wasn't the day you went." And he's like, "I think it was Friday." I'm like, "We went on Friday because we usually go on the Thursday night, the first night it's showing at the theater." But yeah, so we saw this in Holden. I texted you. I said, "Have you seen it yet?" Joe and I thought it was okay, and you said you thought it was pretty good. So have you cooled down since then?
I've cooled down on it. I'm like at a very middle of the road on this. I think there are certain things to really appreciate about it, but I do think this movie is pretty like hollow in a lot of ways. I guess we both rewatched Deadpool 1 and 2 prior to this. And I think I like both of those more than I like this one, I think.
I also do.
And I think one of the surprising things about Deadpool 2 is I think it has a pretty good emotional core to it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I think that's a surprising strength to that.
Both of them.
Yeah, the first one, too, to a lesser extent from the second one. But I think, like, everything they try to do emotionally in this, it feels like they're trying to replicate that same type of thing for this one. And it just doesn't really land for me, like, at all. I feel like Deadpool's conflict in this is really like ham-fisted.
It comes seems out of contrived from where the character is at Deadpool at the end of Deadpool 2. The setup for the plot in this one feels like a big departure in my mind of where Deadpool is at.
No, absolutely. That's what I'm thinking.
Because and I want to be clear. I thought this movie was a ton of fun, and it
has a lot of fun moments.
And I think that people who really like this movie, I think that's completely like valid opinion to have. I do not think you should. We are not saying this movie is bad. We are not saying that you should not enjoy this movie. I had a great time in the theater watching this. I was a little let down because I was like, oh, I thought from what I got out of the movie, I thought there was going to be more of that emotional core that, at least for us, didn't land. Now, maybe for other people, they got something else out of it. Like, we've only seen it once, right? They didn't go see it again. So,
one time.
And a second viewing can change it. But again, let us know down in the comments. Email in what you thought of the movie, why we're wrong, what you agree with, what you disagree with. We can start a dialogue on that. But for me, like, at the end of Deadpool 2, Deadpool 2, the whole plot of the movie is him like getting over himself to help this kid, like putting this kid's needs in front of his own. Even though it hurts him, you know, and he has to make sacrifices. And then at the beginning of Deadpool and Wolverine, he's just self-centered and doesn't care about anything. Apparently,
yeah, but he's like he like is like aware of it or something. He's like not. His whole conflict in this, and it's not really a spoiler, even though it's not in the trailers, but his conflict in this is that he wants to be part of something bigger than himself, and he's kind of depressed and like has fallen out of love with what he does and feels like he isn't very important in the wide scope of the universe, I guess. But
he is part of something bigger than himself at the end of Deadpool 2. He's got like his whole team. It's literally like it's a family movie. He has this new family.
Yeah, he has a family, and I mean, even if you put that aside, it's like a weird jump for him because he's like several times in the previous movies offered to be part of the X-Men.
And doesn't want any
part of that. Yeah. Something bigger than himself, and he just doesn't want any part of that.
That was also a thought I had because, and it's hard to talk about this movie non-spoiler wise.
Yeah, it is
because there are obviously they did a good job of keeping things covered up for this in terms of the plot details and cameos and whatnot. But so that was a big critique for me. It just felt like a departure for the character.
Yeah,
and again, does that mean it's not good? No, I think you can have a departure for a character that works for some people and doesn't work for other people. I mean, like, look at The Last Jedi. Like, I think it's valid to go watch that and be like, wow, I feel like Luke Skywalker is a completely different character from what I know. and also watch and be like, no, that's a natural place for Luke Skywalker to go and all that. I feel like that could be a similar argument here. Personally, upon the first viewing, that kind of took me out of the beginning of it and made it hard for me to invest in this like emotional core of the movie. So that was a big hindrance for it for me. And then my second big gripe is I think this movie, like, it's most similar to Spider-Man No Way Home. Like, I think that's the obvious parallel, right? Because you're going to have all these big cameos and all that stuff that are going to play into the plot because it's a multiverse thing. And a lot of people have cooled off on Spider-Man No Way Home. Granted, I saw it, I haven't seen it since it was in theaters. But one of the things I did like is that the fan service, I felt like having the other two Spider-Men come in, they served the character development of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I do not think any of the cameos in this movie outside of Wolverine really serves Deadpool or Wolverine's character outside of one for Wolverine that I felt like they did not do nearly enough with. And I just felt like they were there to just be a cool, like, oh, play in the sandbox, who can we have in? Which I think is really weird because if you watch the Hot Ones interview, did you watch the Hot Ones with Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds? Ryan Reynolds literally is like, he's like, Sean Evans asked him about his quote saying like, the worst thing for a movie is like too much money and too much time and money or something.
Sure. And
I felt like they had maybe not enough time, but too much money. I felt like they just had money to do whatever they wanted on this one, which you would think would be great. And he also talked about how like spectacle means nothing. Emotional core is everything. And like in that question, he says that. And I'm like, those are my biggest problems with this movie. I was like, it felt like you just threw a bunch of money at this to do whatever you wanted, and you didn't have that emotional stuff and just had some spectacle. And I'm not saying there's no emotional core to this. I'm just saying what the core they did have felt underdeveloped to me in lieu of spectacle. Like I feel like they prioritized spectacle and these set pieces, and the movie suffered for that. And it also felt like now Deadpool has a ton of money to just throw at this.
I think the cameos narratively and in a meta way are fun. I think they're incorporated in a way that is a little more interesting than they could have been because, like, I mean, a lot of these are characters, from. I guess, you mentioned earlier that, the plot revolves around Deadpool's timeline getting pruned and cut short, which is like Disney just wanting to cut it short immediately, and that's what that's paralleling. And then you have these other timelines that have gone out of favor that may have, some cameos from other timelines, other movies and whatnot. And so I think how that's all incorporated is is kind of fun in a meta way, but they really don't serve much of a purpose. And a lot of the cameos do get to do cool things like action wise and stuff, but they don't serve a greater purpose at all.
No, it's just there to be fun.
Yeah.
And look, I don't think that's necessarily a problem.
Yeah.
Like I think people are going to see this and like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I didn't even think I wanted that. It was so cool. And it's very crowd pleasing and that's great. And I don't think you should feel bad about liking that. I think just as a movie, it's just like the story is not, I feel like after watching it once, it's going to lose that impact.
Yeah.
Whereas I defend Spider-Man No Way Home because I do think those characters actually come in and service the development of our main character. Whereas I feel like that does not happen really in this movie at all. And they're simply there for spectacle.
Yeah.
Which spectacle is not a bad thing in of itself. I just think that they sold this movie as more than that and believed it was more than that. And for me, it didn't exceed that spectacle in the emotional area as much as I was hoping for, and it left me a little underwhelmed.
And I think another place where I'm mixed on it and you can say this about I think the other two Deadpool movies to an extent is the jokes. I think there are some that are really quite funny in this movie, obviously, like there are in the previous ones, but there are also some real stinkers here too, which I might mention in the spoilers. But yeah, it's another kind of mixed bag in that regard, where I feel like some of the jokes just really don't land. I think it teeters and maybe falls across the line a little bit of being a little too self-referential for its own good. Like it feels like that's all this movie has in a lot of regards, and that ties into the cameos and whatnot. But there's still quite a few good jokes in here too.
Look, I mean, Deadpool 1 and Deadpool 2 have their fair share of misses for me, and jokes are subjective. Humor is subjective. Someone's going to see this and think this is the funniest thing they've ever seen in their life. It helps when you're in a packed theater. It's all part of that experience. If you thought this was really funny, I don't. Sure. You know, it's just a difference in style of humor. Personally, I feel like this one was less witty. I mean, there are plenty of witty things, great jokes, a lot of references to the Disney Fox merger, all that stuff. It's funny. There's good bits and whatnot. But I felt like there was more just like, balls, you know, like or like boopy boop boop beep beep boop
I want to
boop
have
sort of
sex
humor
with you, Wolverine.
Yeah, sort of thing. Which personally, the jokes that work for me in Deadpool more are the ones that are witty rather than like, haha, pee pee, you know, like sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which, if you like those jokes, I mean, those
More
will hit
power
for you
to
too.
They're here.
Yeah. I just they don't land for me as much because they just feel like very low hanging fruit.
And one thing I do want to mention, since I rag on him a lot, but I mean, Ryan Reynolds is good in this movie.
Yeah. I mean, born to play Deadpool.
Yeah, this is the role he's born to play. I don't like him in almost anything else, but I do like him as Deadpool. He fits the character really well. He's very passionate about the character. He like loves this character so much, and he's loved him for decades at this point. So that's cool. And Hugh Jackman is good too. I think they have
Born to play Wolverine.
Yeah, again. I think they have very good chemistry. There's certain problems I have, especially with Wolverine, that I think I'll have to get into in spoilers. But I think overall together their dynamic works really well. They have some very good action scenes together. Yeah, so I like their little classic buddy cop dynamic. I can see why the pairing was something they really wanted to do.
Yeah, I mean, look, we sound very like negative on this movie. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of enjoyment to be had. I think a lot of it is just like I had high expectations for this, especially after rewatching Deadpool 1 and 2 and feeling like they held up a lot. And look, there's bits in those that don't work for me. Deadpool 2, when he like dies like 4 times, I'm like, this is just killing this movie. I'm like, I don't think this is funny very much. But again, it's subjective. If it works for you, it works great. If it doesn't, those are things I can overlook as long as that core is there. I just think it's weird that Deadpool 1, it's like, okay, this is a romance movie. And they like play out that. Deadpool 2, this is a family movie. And then this one, it's just, there's
not
nothing.
Really anything.
It's not, they don't make any commentary on any sort of structure. And I think that is like one of my issues with this movie as well is like the structure is very odd.
It is weird.
It doesn't seem like it has a lot of momentum, or it's like a lot of the movie feels like to me like we get a bunch of people together and then we stand in a room and we make jokes and then we go somewhere else and there's like an action sequence and there's more people in a room and we stand around and make jokes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and here's really another cameo.
Well, and it's bizarre because like the movie gives you like a deadline, like a timeline of like when like the problem needs to be fixed and everything, but you don't really feel that urgency.
No, not at all, really.
So I don't know.
So yeah, which I get. It's Deadpool. He's a character who's like ADHD the character a little bit in terms of look at that, oh fun thing, cute dog,
Yeah.
Where it just like. I feel like, they could have maybe made it a little bit tighter.
Yeah.
Paced a little bit faster. It is like 2 hours, 11 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
Not too long. And that's nothing against long movies. I love a good long movie. It's just got to be like the pace, like trim the fat, the stuff that doesn't need to be here. And I think there's quite a bit of stuff in this movie that doesn't need to be here.
I also wanted to mention that prior to watching this movie last week, I watched every X-Men movie I hadn't seen. So I know all the cameos in this. So
wow. And I will say,
homeworked.
I've seen Logan and Dark Phoenix.
Wow. High and a low right there. One of the best, one of the worst.
And technically,
you saw New Mutants.
New Mutants and
one
of the
Mutants
Wolverine
references in here.
2009 Wolverine. whatever.
The one that's just called The Wolverine?
The Wolverine.
Yeah, the
Seen-
Japanese
I've seen
one.
half of
It's
that
like
one.
2013.
I fell asleep during the
Another
second
James Mangold movie.
half. Really?
Yeah, I didn't realize that. That was one of the ones I hadn't seen, and I watched it before this. So
There we go. So yeah, we're gonna talk about spoilers here in a second. Holden, you want to give your rating for this?
I'm at like a 5.5.
Wow.
It's 5.5.
No. Holden's very hard on his reviews, so 5.5
I am.
means above average.
I think, as you said, if you can have a lot of fun with it.
so. You'd be rotten on Rotten Tomatoes, huh?
I guess. I mean, I've always said that like a 5 is like completely middle of the road for me. So I don't typically look at it from the Rotten Tomatoes perspective. I'm just more like I'm slightly more positive on it than just completely neutral. Is how I think of it.
Wow. Interesting. Well, let's talk about it. Yeah, I mean, I don't do the number ratings, but I'd be a little bit higher than that, I would say.
I will say, like, when I first saw it, it's like soured over time for me a little bit. Because I like, the more I thought about it, the more I'm just like, I got very little out of this. Very little is sticking with me in terms of even like the humor, which is obviously a central focus. Like, very little of it was sticking with me. There's only like a couple jokes that I really remember from this movie. So
I will say, too, everybody I've talked to in person has loved this movie.
Yeah,
outside
it's a big
of
hit.
You, me, and Joe.
Yeah, I mean, my family
obviously
loved
I've
it.
seen online like people are like, but
Yeah, no, my family loved it too. It's a big hit, biggest R-rated open weekending of all time,
Yeah. Which is cool to see.
Eighth biggest overall of all time. Insane. It's already made more in its opening weekend than both Godzilla vs Kong: The New Empire and the New Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
wow,
So
crazy. All right, let's dive into spoilers.
where should we start? Should we talk about like the cameos first?
I wanted to talk about the beginning because
Yeah.
I keep saying another issue I had with this movie, but I always hate when this happens, and it's really not a movie's fault. But my favorite scene in this entire movie was the first scene where the opening title sequence where he
dancing
just
to bye bye bye.
bye, and he's just desecrating Logan's grave,
Yeah.
and it's the skeleton. I think that was one of the hardest times I laughed. Is
It
when
was
he's
a good joke because he's
when
just
they he's like, that's not how self-healing works or whatever, regenerative healing works, and he just cuts to the skeleton just
well, he's like like before it even fades in, it's like, when we said we were making this movie, people have asked us how we're not gonna desecrate the grave of Logan, and they just do it.
well, we are.
We are. It's a pretty good joke. It's pretty funny. They just go right into it. I liked that a lot.
I thought the action itself was great.
It was
too.
good. I will say,
incorporating with the title sequence, I think was fun. This was the first title sequence though that they didn't have any meta humor.
That's
in
what
it.
I was gonna say, and I don't think like the meta humor of the other opening titles is like a be all
funny.
end all for
Yeah.
me, but it was like kind of distracting that it was so like earnest. It was just like the actual opening titles, no jokes there, but the scene itself was fun.
Yeah. Well, you got to get those MCU credits,
Yeah, got to get the Kevin Feige producer in there.
Yeah.
They could have made a joke about Kevin Feige. I don't know if they make a Kevin Feige joke in this at all.
Produced by a guy who wants to make Star Wars or something. No, they say Feige doesn't let you say cocaine or whatever.
Oh yeah, there's that joke from the trailer. Yeah.
Yeah, so again, I really like that opening sequence. And it does the whole thing of like, oh, how did I get to this moment?
Well, and I also, before we move on from it, I like when he's like trying to use Wolverine's claws, and he's just like, "This is way harder than it looks." He's just very clumsily swinging them around.
Yeah.
That was good.
All great. I will say my least favorite scene in this movie is the Jon Favreau scene. I thought
It goes on too long. God.
I just was like, first off, I'm like, why does he even want to be an Avenger?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it goes into what we
I'm
said
like,
in
when is it?
non-spoilers.
Also, when is this taking place?
Yeah. Well, okay. So, like, end of the last movie, obviously, he got Cable's time traveling device or whatever. So he's going around. He goes to, I guess, the main timeline. On this.
How can you just travel between time? Like that was the part I was confused. I was like,
I think that
because now he just went to a different universe.
Yeah. Well, I think like,
How does he
the
even know
MCU's
about the Avengers?
I don't know. The MCU, I think, has always been kind of like weird with how like timelines work. So I'm not super weirded out
Yeah,
by that.
this
I
is
guess.
nitpicky because I'm like, okay, if Logan is dead, Logan takes place in 2029, I think, right? So this is like 2030 or whatever.
Well, that's okay.
And then
that's
so
he go,
but then he go. How does he know about the Avengers and how does he go there? And I understand Deadpool's a fourth wall breaking character and all this, but I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me. And I wasn't gonna hold it against the movie. But it just was like, what, like logistically, what is happening? Like they have to have some sort of explanation for this, I think. But
well, so
it just was weird.
Deadpool can't take place after Logan because the X-Men still exist in Deadpool's universe. Okay. So like,
so then how is Logan like? Well, you know, what I'm saying?
That's like a big crucial flaw with this movie's story is like, first of all, the introduction of anchor beings as like a thing into the timelines of the TVA. That was not a thing at all in Loki. I don't necessarily like. It's fine if that's just like not a thing that's mentioned. They had other fish to fry in that, but it's just like it adds all these weird logistical problems because like, okay, later on in the timeline, Logan dies. So now the timeline prior to it is just going to disappear. Prior to Logan dying, everyone's going to die now. But like, wouldn't Logan dying already be in the future at any point that you're existing at? You know what I'm trying?
The whole anchor beings things is really dumb.
Yeah.
Also, why is it Logan?
Yeah.
Literally, like Logan? He didn't do anything until like the last minutes of his life.
Yeah,
in that movie, it does, like he's everybody. If you watch Logan, everybody's like, "You're such a freaking disappointment." The whole movie until the last 30 minutes.
From like a meta way, it makes sense because there's always been the criticism in like the X-Men movies that they have such a huge fixation on Wolverine, even though Wolverine isn't always like the main character in the comics or anything. So I guess that makes sense that like Wolverine has constantly been the most important character in this Fox universe, but. Yeah, it still just doesn't make any sense as to why, he dies in the future. And so now in the past, the timeline's going to disappear. And so it's
not like, someone like Jesus.
Yeah, like
or
it's Logan.
Muhammad.
But if you think about it,
Abraham.
You think about it then in like the main MCU universe, like who would the anchor being? It wouldn't be Iron Man.
Yeah.
You'd think it would be someone like Iron Man, and Iron Man's dead. So I don't like. It's
a very strange concept to basically contrive the plot of this movie.
Yeah, and it just doesn't make it. I hope this is just something that is never brought up again, and there's a very good chance it isn't because it just doesn't make any sense really.
Yeah,
it makes it even more contrived than it needs to be.
I forgot to say this in our non-spoiler section, but. The villains just didn't work for me in this movie. I think Matthew McFadden just being like this, well, I just see it this way, so that's how I think it should be done, even though the higher ups don't want me to do it.
I think like initially it's like kind of funny that like he's just like I'm screw it, I'm just gonna destroy the timeline now. Like that's kind of funny.
It's just
but, like,
more efficient.
Yeah, but like as it went on, he worked less and less.
He's also just not in it very much.
No. It's not.
And Matthew McFadden's great, so it's wasted potential there. And then obviously you get...
He does play another just kind of pathetic bureaucrat, though, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. Then I forget the name of...
Cassandra Nova.
Cassandra Nova. Just the all-powerful being who just decides to not use her powers half the time when she could.
Well, okay, so... like, I don't know anything about this character other than she's like a more modern addition to the comics that a lot of people really like. Apparently a very interesting character.
Is she a villain?
Yeah, a villain. Okay. And she is like, they mentioned in the movie that she's like the twin of Charles Xavier, I guess. And so like when they first announced that and I kind of looked up a little bit about her and she's like this all powerful person, I'm like, okay, in concept, I think this could be very funny because you have Deadpool and Wolverine very out of their depth fighting this villain that is way more powerful than they are. So they either have to come up with a really clever way of defeating her or or
they just put Magneto's helmet on her momentarily and then they're like, hey, will you not kill us? And she's like, yes, I will. But well, actually, just kidding, I won't.
No, I was going to say the other option is like you could, if you really wanted to go all in, you could do some like really dumb, like fourth wall breaking way to defeat her. I'm not saying that would necessarily be a great way to go about it, but there would be at least some creativity there. But instead in this movie, you do have that where she's like, they're like, can you just let us go? And she's like, yeah, okay. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. She has a change of heart. It's kind of contrived, but she lets him go. But then, like,
And I feel
5 seconds
it's
later,
also contrived that she's angry at Matthew McFadden's character because she likes to live in the void, but then all of a sudden she's like, "You're playing in my sandbox, and we agreed not to do that. So I'm going to come up and destroy literally everything."
Yeah, well, that's It was she has this like change of heart, but then all of a sudden is like, actually, I'm just going to destroy all the universes now, I guess, or something, because I want everything to end up in the void so I can hang out with all of it. Basically, it was very stupid. I think like the performance by Emma Corrin is good. And whatever, but like I said, I like what they do. Like her powers are fun. I like the whole like reaching into people's heads thing.
That was great. That was a great visual gig. That was unique.
Yeah,
different. Just like some like mine's a little bit more hands on.
Yeah,
double entendre there, and just
But
that was great.
But it ends up like they just beat her by defeating this movie's version of a sky beam. They just like blow up this machine and she blows up. Like, it's not interesting at all.
The power of brotherly love.
Yeah. It was very, very lame, honestly.
Yeah. So there's that. I don't know. It left a little to be desired for me. And I'm not saying the other Deadpool villains are fantastic.
No.
You got Ed Skrein. I always forget.
Ajax.
It's Ajax in the first one. He's all right.
Yeah.
He's serviceable.
And the second one, you have the kid and Juggernaut.
And Cable, kind of, for a little bit.
Which, by the way, Cable and I guess
Domino is just AWOL.
So Cable, I kind of understand not having in here because that might, there's all this stuff with timelines already, so that might, I don't know, cause some issues. But yeah, Domino's not in this for some reason, and Domino was great.
The best character in Deadpool 2. Super entertaining.
Yeah, just cool, not even mentioned in this at all. So disappointing. Also, okay, in the few scenes we get in the Fox universe where it's like Wade's birthday party and everything, you have his ex-girlfriend Colossus, all of them are there. What's his name? The one guy, the regular guy that was on X-Force. Peter. Yeah, Peter's there. There's a member of X-Force there, Shatterstar, that definitely dies in Deadpool 2, and he's just there.
Well, at the end of the movie, he starts bringing everybody back to life.
But I don't I just rewatched Deadpool 2, and I don't he goes back and saves Peter, but I don't think he saves this guy.
Okay.
I'm missing something here, but I was just like, and he's not in this movie that much. I was like, is that the guy from Deadpool 2? And I looked it up, and it was. I was like, maybe I'm missing something, but
yeah, I mean, it is what that is at this point. I don't want to just talk about things that didn't work for us and we didn't like. So I'm trying to come up with more things that we did like.
I liked, and I don't know if this is a hot take because I feel like I was laughing at this more than most people, but I liked all the stuff with Nice Pool. I like the nice Deadpool.
I was mixed on that. I thought it was like, I could have done with less Nice Pool.
Yeah, he might have been in it too much, but I mean, probably my favorite joke in this was when he just turns to the camera and says the proposal.
I thought that was funny. I thought also that was funny that he did not have the regenerative healing.
That was good too at the end.
Oh, you
just get shot up.
and then everybody else does.
Yeah. that was a very good twist. I like that. And Dogpool is great.
I liked Dogpool. I also thought just overplayed.
Yeah. Well, I think like Dogpool's very cute and how I think it is literally the world's ugliest dog. I think it's officially they got the dog that's considered the world's ugliest dog in this movie. And it's very cute in an ugly way. And pretty good dog actor for a dog that I assume wasn't, originally trained to do that.
They definitely did not have two dogs in this one. I can tell you that much.
But yeah, the whole bit with Deadpool being obsessed with the dog, that went on too long. It was kind of fun at first that he's just obsessed with this ugly dog because he's kind of ugly too. That's a fun little bit, but yeah, went on a little too long, a little too often.
Okay. Should we just talk about the cameos at this point?
Yeah, I feel like that's the big thing we haven't been talking about.
All right.
Let's start
as chronologically as we can. I completely forgot Henry Cavill was in this until I had like I usually don't want to listen to any or watch any reviews beforehand because I just want to give kind of my unsolicited thoughts.
Yeah.
But this I was like, okay, I just want to remember because a lot happens in this movie. Okay, what happened? And someone mentioned Henry Cavill being in it. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Just completely blanked on that.
I will say, so that whole sequence, I think it is a pretty fun sequence because you're going around and you're visiting these different comic variants of Wolverine. There's the bit where he's like small because that was another big complaint with Hugh Jackman when he was first cast is that he Wolverine in the comics is kind of more of a short, stout, muscly, gruff guy.
Wolverine.
Yeah, and then Hugh Jackman is tall and handsome and everything, so you have this little hairy short one.
Yeah,
I think that was fun. You have him in his brown suit when he fights the Hulk, which my dad afterwards was upset because when he fights Wolverine's first appearance in the comics is fighting the Hulk, and it's outside of the X-Men from what I understand. But he's not wearing the brown suit when he fights the Hulk. And Deadpool's in the movie is like, oh yeah, you're wearing this when you fight the Hulk. And my dad's like, no, he was wearing the yellow and blue suit when he was fighting the Hulk. Scott Sutter knows what's up.
What a nerd.
But yeah, all the other ones, I mean, all of them were pretty fun.
It's fun.
Yeah, it was a good sequence.
One thing I will say, the costumes looked great.
Yeah.
Great looking costumes. I think the Wolverine one was really good. Obviously Deadpool's.
Yeah.
That was a funny bit with the the tailor. Your tailor is a predator.
Oh yeah.
That was a funny bit.
Kept slapping his butt.
Yeah. But yeah, that was a good bit. What's the next set of cameo? It's Chris Evans, the next cameo.
I think so, yeah, because it's and then when they get sent to the void, they run into Chris Evans and they're like, oh, it's Captain America, get ready to say Avengers Assemble, and he says flame on,
which I'm sure everybody else realized was going to happen the moment that he came on screen, but fortunately for me, as someone who's not into the big into the Fox Marvel movies, I completely forgot about that.
That was one I had spoiled for me prior to seeing it. And that was one of the only ones I had spoiled for me. So I was like, okay, it's Human Torch and everything. But that was fun. I liked that. Getting Chris Evans back. Chris Evans, no.
There's a fly in here, Holden. This is the fly episode of That One Movie podcast.
Chris Evans, no stranger to having cameos in Sean Levy, Ryan Reynolds led Sean Levy movies.
Golly.
But this one was
a lot better.
Yeah.
Also, did not really serve a purpose either.
No, but it was fun. I mean, it was like it kind of introduced the void, and as I mentioned in non-spoilers, this whole concept of there's been all of these timelines that have just died out over time, which in the meta is these various franchises that have just naturally died out, like the Chris Evans Fantastic Four. I mean, we'll get to it in a bit, like Blade, Elektra, that kind of thing. And then you have the Fox stuff that is being cut short, not being able to die naturally. So I liked that was kind of the introduction to that. But yeah, aside from being kind of like a whoa moment, didn't really do much. Gets defeated.
It's just Mad Max.
Yeah, it is.
I'm like, this is just unashamedly just Mad Max.
They make a reference later to Mad Max.
Oh yeah, this is the head of your Queen Furiosa or whatever.
Yeah, I can't remember what they say.
I actually thought that was really funny.
It was pretty good. Pretty good bit. I do one recurring bit I really like in this movie is just that Deadpool and Wolverine constantly fight each other and neither of them can die. So they're just viciously, violently attacking each other. And neither they both have insane healing abilities, so they can't really kill each other. And I really like that.
Yeah. Except Logan, his regenerative abilities are really bad in
Logan. But that's they explain that in Logan that it's because he's getting older and he's had the adamantium on his bones. It's like a poison, it's slowly poisoning him.
So apparently the adamantium in this guy's Wolverine's bones, who's presumably a similar age, but maybe not.
I think he is supposed to be older in Logan.
Okay,
I think they definitely made Hugh Jackman look older in that movie. Yeah. But yeah.
Well, and it's also just a different universe. So.
Yeah, so it could just be different.
But yeah, that's fun. to see that fight, but then they also just fight again.
Yeah.
I didn't need another fight, I don't think.
Well,
I mean, it's a fun fight.
The second fight is a lot of fun. So
in the Honda Odyssey.
Yeah. So it starts out and Wolverine has that really good like monologue where he's yelling at Wade about how like he's like life's cruelest joke because like he can't die, but everyone wants him to, or like whatever. He's like, that's a really good monologue, and I've seen that kind of shared around a bit. And then the ensuing fight is a lot of fun, and it's filmed like a sex scene, kind of. I
didn't think of it that way.
Oh yeah, I 100% think that's part of the intention. It's like because you get like the shots of like the car like rocking from the outside and stuff. So I think that was part of the intention. But I think it was like just creative how they were supposed to be like confined to the car and everything, and they made use of that. I thought it was a fun fight.
And it was a funny bit when they cut back and Deadpool's just covered in seatbelts.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, that was fun. And then obviously we have just all the cameos of the new team.
Yeah, well, before that, even back when we have Chris Evans, you have a bunch of like X-Men like characters because Pyro's the fire guy. Okay. He's a character in X2 and The Last Stand, which I just watched for the first time. And that leads to a separate problem I have with the whole concept of these universes dying out because the X-Men universe is the movie universe is very convoluted on its own. But if that universe still exists, technically, the Fox universe in this movie's world, I don't understand why some of the Fox X-Men characters are just there and they're seemingly just like the same versions of the characters. That didn't really make any sense to me. How they're already there.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
But again, those things I'm not going to hold those things. Those nitpicky things against the movie.
Sabretooth is in here. He's a fight. I thought that was a really lame part when Deadpool's like hyping up the fight between Wolverine and Sabretooth because he says something like how people have been waiting decades for this. I'm like, I'm pretty sure they fight each other in the first X-Men movie, and I just watched it. Maybe I'm misremembering because I don't know. That was weird. It's the rematch, I guess. Yeah, they need a rematch. There's Juggernaut there. Seems to be more akin to the Juggernaut from X-Men 3.
Chris Evans gets his skin peeled off.
He does. Yep.
That was a good death.
That was a good death. I thought the whole bit with like Deadpool blaming him for saying all this stuff, even with the post-credits scene, I thought it was like kind of unfunny. I was like, that just went on too long. Like a lot of things that we mentioned in this.
It also felt like the bit again of Chris Evans said something naughty, Chris Evans being vulgar. It's funny because he was Captain America and Captain America doesn't swear.
That. Yeah.
And I'm like, they have done that bit. Sean Levy has done that bit like 3 times at this point.
And I do think like the post-credit scene is kind of funny, mostly because of Chris Evans' performance of that whole like little monologue at the end. But it is like in the context of the rest of the movie, it's just goes on.
See, it did not do anything for me or Joe, and the rest of the theater was just thunderous laughter. So I guess we have poor taste in humor is the problem. But it's just a different taste in humor. It's not right or wrong, and people love this movie. Good on them. I always am jealous when people like a movie more than me. I'm like, dang it, I want to like this movie as much.
Lucky ducks.
Convince us why it's good.
So then we go to the other cameos, which is a really cringe scene, especially at the beginning, because it's just these people walking in one by one with room for applause. It's Jennifer Garner as Elektra from the...
Also, for me, who's not seen these movies.
Yeah, you haven't seen any of these, I don't think.
None of them. I haven't even seen Blade.
Yeah, Jennifer Garner was Elektra in both the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie and she had her own standalone movie in the mid-2000s. And then Wesley Snipes' Blade came in and Channing Tatum as Gambit, which that's a whole meta joke in and of itself because he was like attached to a Gambit movie for the longest time that was just never made. That. Yeah. And I think the best joke related to him is like him saying something like, I feel like I've always been here, or something like that. Because the movie was never actually made. And then X-23, which that was did you have that spoiled for you?
No.
That was insane. They like a week before this movie came out, they just like spoiled it.
Well, you heard the backstory in that is the actress wanted to attend the premiere, so they're like, well, it's gonna be fishy if she shows up to the premiere, so we just put it in this trailer, which fortunately I didn't see.
Yeah, I just saw something about it online, but like I don't know, like people from like
just go to a premiere.
Yeah, people just go to a premiere. Like,
and even then, it's like then they can just notice it, you know.
Yeah.
And fewer people are going to notice it.
Yeah, instead of just coming out and saying,
I'm glad I didn't know that because that was I was like, oh wow, that's really cool. Because I had literally thought, I'm like, what else has that actress even done like since Logan and all that? And I had just rewatched Logan.
She was in The Acolyte.
Was she actually?
Apparently, yeah.
Oh wow, I had just rewatched Logan too, so I was like, this is really cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
And I think she's the one cameo that actually serves a purpose in this movie.
Yes,
other than just looking cool.
Yes, but with an asterisk, because I still think that like she doesn't like. I don't really need this Wolverine to just go through a similar arc to what the Wolverine in Logan does, which is what they attempt to do here. And also, I feel like where they end with like Wolverine just being in. Well, okay, first of all, it doesn't make any sense that X-23 is just in the same timeline as Deadpool and his friends, because she should be way in the future. But like now that Wolverine is just staying in this Fox universe, I feel like to me, it like lessens the impact of the end of Logan, which I know they like joke about that throughout this movie. And for the most part, they like avoid it. But like having just now Logan's just, she just has a father figure again. And it's just another Logan. I don't know.
And also her universe just went into the void despite Logan's sacrifice.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I thought that was fun I thought her line about like, you know, no Wolverine is good enough until they are, or whatever she says.
Yeah.
So it's like no one's the right one until they are.
Yeah.
I'm like, preach, sister, let's go. Mm-hmm. And then she's just not in the rest of the movie.
She just gets,
or after that fight, which I don't know. Fight. Are you okay? Are you gonna live?
I have.
You got that adamantium in your bones.
I'm out of water, so I'm suffering here. I'm sorry. Keep going.
Yeah. So yeah, I that was the one cameo I felt like actually did something for the movie and at least helped one of the characters. Blade's line of Wesley Snipes saying like, I'm the one and only Blade that there's ever going to be, or whatever he says.
Yeah.
I thought that was funny. Deadpool turning to the camera.
I did like
I'm
the
like,
one.
Well, maybe at this point.
There's the one line, I don't remember exactly how it goes, where Blade's like, Blade says something about Deadpool. He's like, I don't like you. And then Ryan Reynolds says, you never have. And that's Ryan Reynolds is in Blade 3. And like, there's very infamous behind the scenes stuff with them or something. So that was a fun meta joke. God, the biggest dud was when Wesley Snipes just says the R slur. I was like, what? That came out of nowhere. Just fell on deaf ears in our theater. I was like, wow, big wet thud there.
Yeah.
Also, I would say the other joke. I mean, there's a few jokes that I think really don't land, but another one was like the Will Smith slap joke at the beginning of the movie. God, just feels dated already. Yeah,
I'm like, nobody's gonna understand that one.
No,
I thought like another one that was like, I don't know how many people got this, but like the Spock on the window. I'm like, how many people under the age of 25 would understand a Wrath of Khan reference?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like you probably still have people that'll just think it's funny because it's just a Star Trek reference.
Yeah, but like I don't think they'll fully get the joke.
No,
do you know that?
I'm gonna be honest. I mean, I know that scene that you're talking about, but when I watched the movie, I did not take it as that.
I was like,
because I've never seen Wrath of Khan, so.
Yeah. I mean, like it's like in the first Deadpool, like he makes a Jared Fogle subway guy joke.
That's
I'm
right.
like, are people gonna understand this 10 years from now?
Yeah.
Right.
Dates the movie a bit.
Yeah. But it is what it is.
You really didn't like Channing Tatum as a Gambit?
Oh gosh. I just was like the voice part is like, it's funny like once, but it's like, oh
it overstayed its welcome. I think like I think he had like a cool, like
I think I'm also biased because I just hated Channing Tatum's Free Guy cameo. I think that's the worst cameo in the history of anything, probably.
I forgot
and
about
Chris
that.
Evans being in that movie is also up there.
Yeah, well, and so like this like group that we're talking about right now, I think they have like a pretty good fight scene afterwards. Overall, like I think like Gambit is a fan favorite character, so seeing him being able to use his powers in kind of fun ways, I think was cool. But yeah, his voice is just. There was like once where I laughed at it, and it was just like one of the times where he's just like mumbling nonsense, and then Deadpool's like, "I don't know what you just said."
Your dialect coach is like the Minions or something.
Yeah,
that was funny.
That was a good. That was the one, but
yeah, that fly is gonna make you go crazy, Holden.
I know.
Wonder if it's getting picked up on camera. Holden's like a cat.
Have to attack it.
Yeah, the action sequence was cool. One of the action sequences that just didn't work for me was when they killed all the Deadpools.
Oh, I like that.
Really? I just was like, you have all these variations of Deadpools and you're just mowing through them and there's like no difference between killing any of them.
Well, I think that is just.
I felt like it was incredibly stale. I was like, wow, they built this all up and then they didn't do anything with, like, you have a samurai one, you didn't have like a little cool samurai fight. I felt there was no interaction with the actual variety of the Deadpools themselves. It was like, oh, I'm in a bus and now you just see a bunch of Deadpool's blood splattering.
See, my biggest problem with it is just that it's so like just shoved in at the end of the movie. Like you have Nice Pool that shows up earlier on and he's like, yeah, you know, there's a bunch of us, there's a lot of us here or whatever. And that's fine, but it wasn't like really naturally built up to that they're just gonna have to fight this army of Deadpools.
Yeah, I also like what? Why did they want to stop them? I was so confused.
They like work for Cassandra Nova or something.
Okay, I was really confused at that point because I thought they were gonna team up with them or something.
Yeah, I don't know. That was just very bizarre. I think the fight scene itself is fun. I mean, it's very Old Boy-esque. But
yeah, but not as good.
It's not as good, but I think like I think
if you're gonna do it, go out and do it. Like otherwise, just don't do it. Like it just added another 10 to 15 minutes to the movie that didn't need to be there. I feel like, and it was just literally spectacle.
If the Deadpool, like, you could just cut all the Deadpool army stuff out and that'd be fine. But since they're there, I thought the fight scene was fine.
I think my takeaway from this is I just need to see this movie again to really know. And that's a joke. That's the joke on me because I'm just paying Marvel more money than I just need to see this movie again to really understand where I feel on it. Because I feel like some of the things I've said are going to be like, that's really not a big deal.
Yeah. And
some of the other things I might be like, actually, I'm going to, plant my flag here at least until I'm convinced otherwise that I feel this way about it. Because right now it's like you could persuade me into thinking this movie's great or horrible.
Yeah.
I'm really could go either way or just, be in between.
Well, and the Deadpool scenes have cameos of them their own because Lady Deadpool is Blake Lively,
which I didn't realize.
Ryan Reynolds' wife.
I guess isn't like Matthew McConaughey is one of them?
Yeah,
I didn't
the
realize.
Cowboy Deadpool.
Didn't realize that. Either.
I think Ryan Reynolds' kids are like the kid Deadpools.
Okay.
The floating head one, which is the most fun one, I think that's Nathan Fillion, I guess.
Oh, that's cool. So didn't realize any of that.
Yeah, that's all fun. And then they just blow up Cassandra Nova, and it's kind of lame. And they just go back to the Fox universe, or they're just in the Fox universe. Okay, one other thing that goes along with that, if the movie is like, it feels kind of cheap because the entire climax is just on that one street. It was just like it felt like they just had this one set and they just had to work with it or something. I was like, why? It just feels like weirdly confined here.
Yeah. Felt like a studio. It felt like a studio set.
It did, yeah.
Definitely just was in the back lot.
Yeah.
Of Pinewood Studios or wherever this was. Georgia, probably. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was all right. I was let down. I thought I had more confidence in this movie. I had pretty high expectations for it, and I did not quite live up to them. No. Although I did have a lot of fun. People really enjoy it. It's cool. It's helping theaters make a lot of money. I do not think this movie helps the MCU really. I don't think this makes anybody more excited for Captain America 4 or like the Thunderbolts or anything. I don't think it pushes the needle there like some people think it might. I think that's just misguided thinking by people who don't understand the MCU. could be completely wrong, but that's just my
Yeah,
where
because
I
you're
would
gonna have
feel.
plenty of people going into this not even knowing it's part of the MCU, right?
Now, if
Like,
Deadpool all of a sudden you show him in the trailer for one of these movies, then absolutely.
Deadpool shows up in Avengers Doomsday.
Yeah,
It's
well,
like-
there's that whole Thor stuff
yeah.
foreshadowing.
Yeah.
I thought that was going to be this movie, and then I guess not. It'll be one of
I thought
those
that
other
was,
ones.
that was kind of. I thought it was kind of funny that they just like, and I think it would still be funny if that just like never comes to fruition. It's just like this little like background gag
that was a kind of a funny thing that he kept waking up and he'd say something about Thor.
yeah.
God of Thunder. Yeah, I think I need to see this movie one more time before I kind of feel a little bit more cemented in my thinking. But just very much in the middle
Yeah.
on this one. Wish I liked it as much as everybody else did,
Same. Yeah.
but we're just better than everyone. I think.
I
Holden.
guess,
I think
yeah.
that's the takeaway here.
It had that.
That's sarcasm, folks.
It had that cute little montage during the credits.
Yeah. Also, but was that really earned?
No.
I was like,
well, that's okay.
that did not feel earned to me at all. I was
The
like, there's
argument-
no really. Granted, these are movies I haven't seen, but from the outside looking in, that didn't feel like a love letter
No.
to these movies at all. It felt like, okay, well, we're gonna bring in some random things and we're gonna have our own plot, and then that.
On its own, it's cute, and it is. I mean, because this is the end of the Fox universe in a way, but it felt very emotionally manipulative because it wasn't really like it was more of like. If it was a celebration of anything, it was a celebration of just like more forgotten characters, I would say. But it's not really like a celebration of like Fox or anything because there's plenty of like X-Men. Oh God, sorry, my cough. There's plenty of X-Men that just like aren't in this movie and stuff. Fant Four Stick, no representation there. What the
They
heck?
showed it in the
Yeah,
in the
but
credits,
no
yeah.
characters.